is nothing insignificant about anything we're talking about, because it affects everybody in New Orleans. We can't sugarcoat anything. We can't, just like Gary was saying, I think there's lived experiences in every part of this city that can testify and take witness to the fact of what they've lived and what they've experienced and what their families have experienced, and how it has affected the entire community in a long-term traumatic situation. So if the PCABs, the Police Community Advisory Boards, have been allowed to fail, then what I heard you say earlier today, or I think the other gentleman said, and then you just said, that there is a plan being created by the city. But the PCAB, I'm a president of a PCAB. We haven't heard anything about it. Our opinions have not been asked. We've not been asked to come to a meeting. We have not been alerted even to these meetings. I had to find out for myself. So if we're not even doing basic communication, how is this going to be community-led independent boards that will be the eyes and ears of the community? And it's no small thing. So I have this young lady, you asked a question I had as well. The other part, what will make, okay, these review boards, discipline review board, use of force review board, performance review board. You mentioned that they have not been very active. Okay. You mentioned, and it was mentioned today, that they have not been active over the last 12 years, and a lot of these meetings haven't happened, but they're just starting to happen again. So my concern is, if we've been under this consent decree for all these years, and all of these meetings and review boards and community boards have not been in effect, are we just scrambling to try to meet some kind of benchmark to say, oh, it's time to remove the consent decree? I feel like this is a rush process. I feel like the community has only had, the citizens of New Orleans have only had, we're looking at 45 to 30, 60 days after 12 years to bring the community into this. And I think we really, really need to look at extending this whole process and making sure that we have a community-led, robust community engagement plan before we remove the consent decree.
I agree with you that the PCABs is no small error. Their activity hasn't worked. I don't think Judge Morgan is going to approve, is going to grant the motion until and unless she's satisfied that there is a plan in place that will be implemented within the 2 years in a way that we monitor to make sure it's working before the consent decree.
But it has to be, the community has to be engaged in creating that plan. It can't just be done by the very same entities that have created a structure that has failed for 12 years.
I hear you. We don't have the authority to make them do it one way or the other, but you can pressure and we'll take that feedback. I think we will take that feedback.
Does the judge have that authority? Does the judge have that authority?
I don't want to speak for the judge.
Okay.
She probably does. She's a federal district court judge. I'm confident she will make sure there's a plan she has confidence in before she grants the motion. Okay. And if a plan comes to her that she doesn't have confidence in, she may not be able to tell them, here's how to do it. But she can certainly say, this is not good enough, and maybe give them some guidance as to what they would have to do to get
okay, so I'm sorry, one more. Can you just go back to what I first asked, which is, are you, as a federal monitoring team, presenting this presentation as a promotion of that we're ready to go, remove the consent decree and go into the sustainment plan?
No, as long as we've been having these meetings, we've always said our job is to call balls and strikes. When the department gets it right, we say so. When the department doesn't get it right, we say so. And even in this presentation, some things we said they're doing well, some things we say need further attention. So we're not advocating, we're just presenting the information, and then there'll be a fairness hearing where people can come.
And then Park.
Go
ahead.
Before I get to your question, I want to say to the officer, she's kind of been screaming in or out, happy to have you here because we want you to hear this process, but it's a little disruptive to have 4 of you come in and out.
Yeah.
Not all 4 different, but I would just ask you to either.
They got a call for service at the library.
Okay, fair enough.
That the
Okay.
security guard at the library called them saying that there was having a problem there. That's why they all left, because they were just right there. I mean,
Fair enough, that works, and I apologize.
You didn't mean to be disruptive.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, I apologize. Yes, sir.
Thanks for raising that point. You talked a bit about transparency, which seems a little off note to me, considering that we have been accusing and calling you out for corruption, yet you don't disclose this anywhere in your presentation. This is especially troubling given at the earlier meeting, one of your own staff members during the meeting corroborated that there is a sense of corruption. It's even more troubling given that the first time I met you, you had one of your paid representatives, Arlinda Westbrook, in the audience, make one of the few pro-consent decree comments that I've heard, and it came from one of your paid representatives. So this isn't just like a theoretical issue, it's actually been a problem in these public spaces. My two questions for you are, we know that you're working with former NOPD leaders, one of which who has a contract with the city. To your knowledge, other than Michael Harrison, have you ever worked with, employed, hired, paid, had any affiliation in a professional capacity while you were a monitor with an NOPD personnel while they were actively NOPD personnel? That's my first question. And my second question is that you had also mentioned in our earlier meeting that you have responded to ION Surveillance's concerns. I would like you to acknowledge that, in fact, we have never received a written response from your office about either the predictive policing issue or your conflicts of interest. So what you said earlier was just not true. You have not, could you confirm that you have not addressed our issues in writing?
I never said that we addressed your issues in writing. What I responded to at the meeting on Monday night was that a response will be coming, but it has to be reviewed. But I was able to give the answer, but he will get a response.
This was like months ago, you know, the one in July. That's when you said that you would give us a response. Okay, gotcha. Okay. The first part of the question was, have you ever worked with, employed, blah, 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 anybody at NOPD while they were actively affiliated with NOPD?
ELEFA was asked to conduct an officer-involved shooting incident in Virgin Islands. It was overseen by Arlinda Westbrook, who's not a city employee. A subcontractor to that was Kevin Burns, who is currently the captain of the homicide. So that was the one instance.
So you have worked with active NOPD personnel while also monitoring NOPD?
I did not work with them personally, but the organization did.
The organization you founded. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bond. Now we have a problem with, we've got the mayor, who's over the police department. She's over the PID, she controls all of that. You monitor, sitting there, you know this. And it just seems as though you guys are in cahoots with the city to get rid of this consent decree and go into this 2-year suspended period. Who is going to police the police? Because you know the independent police monitor does not have the authority nor the personnel